The first time I saw the Obsidian Caves, the sun was setting, and the jagged silhouette of the cliffs seemed like the spine of some ancient, slumbering beast. The air tasted metallic, thick with the scent of sulfur and wet stone, and the wind whispered along the sharp edges as if warning us not to enter. I had heard the stories, how these caves were born from fire and madness, how entire expeditions had vanished into the black heart of the mountains. But there's a foolish pride that comes with being a spelunker. Danger doesn't frighten me. Fear is a flavor I savor, not a warning. Our team was small. Mark, who carried a quiet intensity that made me uneasy. Lena, whose laughter could cut through the blackest cave but always felt like a fragile thing. And me, guiding them into a place no one had really charted in decades. I had studied the maps, traced every contour, memorized every known chamber. But the Obsidian Caves weren't the kind of place that welcomed charts or careful planning. The glassy walls shimmered as though aware of our presence, reflecting our torchlight in fractured, almost mocking ways. We began our descent at the base of a jagged cliff where the mouth of the cave yawned like a gaping wound. Each step onto the black volcanic glass made a hollow, brittle sound, like stepping on ice that might shatter at any moment. I took a deep breath, tasting the air, and already I felt it. Something lurking, just beyond the flicker of the light. A shift in the shadows that didn't belong to any of us. Mark paused, raising his hand. "Did you see that?" he whispered, his voice almost lost in the echo. "I saw nothing," I said, though my gut clenched. That's how it always starts. The subtle suggestion that something watches, something waits. The cave's breath felt alive, moving with us, pressing in on our lungs. We descended further, each step taking us deeper into the obsidian labyrinth, the walls narrowing around us, smooth and sharp like knives. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time was a meaningless thing here. The deeper we went, the more the cave seemed to twist and breathe, its dark veins pulsing in a rhythm that matched the panic rising inside me. Then we found the first signs. Claw marks, shallow but old, etched into the glass as though the rock itself had been scratched in desperation. Lena touched them lightly, her fingers trembling. These aren't human," she said softly. I didn't respond. I only felt the air thicken around us. Each breath was heavier, laden with the taste of something ancient, something waiting. And then came the sound, the first of many. A whisper from deep in the black. Not a voice, not words, but a low, sliding rasp that vibrated through the obsidian walls, through our bones, through the very marrow of our fear. We froze. Mark shone his torch into the darkness, but the beam seemed to dissolve almost instantly. Shadows writhed where there should have been none. And then I heard it. A breath that wasn't ours, slow and deliberate, moving through the tunnels, coming closer. I wanted to tell them to turn back, to leave, but my voice caught in my throat. The cave didn't just want us gone. It wanted something else, and somehow I knew it had been waiting for decades, maybe centuries, for intruders bold or foolish, enough to disturb its silence. That night, we camped in a chamber that looked almost welcoming, a hollow lined with glossy black walls. Couldn't sleep. The whispers grew louder, or maybe it was my mind, straining in the dark. Something shifted in the shadows, just out of torchlight, and I swore I saw a shape, a mass of something that moved like liquid darkness. When morning came, we found scratches around our camp. Small, claw-like, countless. And I realized with a sinking chill that the creatures here did not merely react to us. They were alive in the stone itself, bound to the obsidian, and now that we had breathed their air, touched their walls, we had awakened them. As we pressed further into the cave, I began to see them more clearly. Shapes that flickered at the edge of my vision, massive but indistinct, coiling and curling around the tunnels. Each one seemed to pulse in time with our own hearts, and sometimes I swore one of them moved inside me, making my own blood thrum with its slow, inhuman rhythm. I don't know how long we've been down here. Days? Hours? My journal is useless. The ink seems to smear almost on its own, as if the darkness resists record. All I know is that the Obsidian Caves are alive, and I can feel their patience. They do not hunt us yet. They wait, and in the silence, I can hear their breath, echoing, endless, and inhuman, just beyond the reach of the torchlight. The passage narrowed so suddenly that I had to squeeze through on all fours, the obsidian walls cutting at my clothes, my skin, my hands. Each movement felt like an intrusion, a sin against the cave itself. The air grew heavier, almost viscous, and every breath left a metallic taste on my tongue. Lena was ahead of me, her torchlight flickering erratically, and I could hear her quiet muttering, the words incoherent, frayed at the edges. Mark was silent, always silent. He had taken to moving behind me, scanning the walls with a focus that made my skin crawl. I could feel him watching me, but not just me, watching everything, trying to anticipate whatever this place wanted from us. And then I felt it again. A pressure in the air, a vibration beneath my feet. At first, I thought it was the cave settling, the natural sounds of stone and glass. But no, it wasn't natural. It was deliberate, a heartbeat that wasn't ours, yet perfectly synchronized with mine. I stopped moving. I could hear the others pause as well. Silence, thick and almost tactile, settled around us, broken only by the occasional drip of water from some unseen ceiling. Then came the whispering. It started as a faint hiss, almost like whined through a hollow pipe. Then it became more defined, articulate in a way that made my blood run cold. Not words, not language, but thought. Ideas pressed against my mind, twisting and reshaping in ways I couldn't name. Shapes and images flashed behind my eyelids. Black wings, teeth that glimmered like glass, tunnels extending beyond any earthly sense of direction. I fell to my knees, gasping. My lungs burned from the effort of trying to ignore it. Lena crouched beside me, her hands trembling as she reached toward mine. "Do you feel it?" she whispered. They're in here with us." I nodded, though the word felt useless. How could you explain this? Something in this cave had always been here, waiting for intruders to stumble into its labyrinth, to breathe its air, to make noise in its hollow. And now that we had it stirred, hours or maybe days passed like this. We moved only when necessary, always alert, always listening. The whispering never stopped. Sometimes it would fade into silence, leaving only the sound of our own panicked breaths, and I would think we had imagined it. Then it would return, louder, sharper, filled with a presence that seemed to leer at us from the darkness. We discovered chambers beyond chambers, each one more unsettling than the last. Walls polished to a mirror-like black reflected our terrified faces, stretching and warping them into grotesque mockeries. Pools of water here and there reflected nothing, not even our lights, just a perfect, opaque black. And always, in the farthest corners, shadows moved that we could never illuminate. It was in one of these chambers that Lena disappeared. One moment she was beside me, adjusting her torch, her face pale and tense. The next, she was gone. I called her name until my voice cracked, until the echo swallowed me whole, but there was only silence in return. Mark was calm, terrifyingly calm. "She's not gone," he said quietly, staring at the wall as if he could see something I couldn't. "She's part of it now. She's listening." Listening. The word chilled me, because that's what this place demanded. It didn't just want our presence. It wanted us to understand, to surrender, to let the obsidian breathe into us and make us something else. I felt it in myself, something shifting. My thoughts were no longer my own. They twisted when I tried to hold them. Faces flashed at the edge of my vision. Not human, not entirely, but familiar. And when I blinked, they were gone, leaving only the suffocating black. I realized I couldn't trust Mark, either. His calm was not sanity, it was a compromise, a surrender to whatever rules governed this cave. Every time he moved forward, it felt like he was drawn by some invisible thread, deeper into the obsidian heart of the place. I wanted to turn back, to escape, but I didn't know where back was anymore. The tunnels looped, shifted, defying any logic of space or direction. My compass spun uselessly in my hands, and the map I carried seemed to wrinkle and distort as if the cave itself rejected it. The whispers were louder now, insistent, almost commanding. I could feel shapes pressing in on me, the sensation of something brushing against my skin, something soft yet sharp, like a living shadow. And I knew, without knowing how I knew, that if I breathed too deeply, if I inhaled too much of this cave's air, I would become part of it. And maybe that was what it wanted all along. I moved cautiously, my torch held out in front of me, trembling with a mixture of fear and something else, something primal, almost intoxicating. The cave seemed to pulse with every step I took, as though it could sense my heartbeat and was adjusting itself to match. Shadows lengthened, shrank, twisted into impossible angles, and the sound of breathing, mine and something else, echoed back at me in grotesque rhythm. I thought I saw Lena's face in the walls, reflected in a shard of obsidian that jutted out like a jagged fang. She was smiling, but her eyes were hollow. I blinked and the image was gone. The cave was teaching me not to trust. You can replace this text with any text you wish. You can either write in this text box or paste your own text here. Try different languages and voices. Change the speed and the pitch of the voice. You can even tweak the SSML, speech synthesis markup language, to control how the different sections of the text sound. Click on SSML above to give it a try. Enjoy using text-to-speech. Feeling my body heavy with exhaustion, but somehow there was no end to the hallway. It stretched on, a tunnel of polished black stone that seemed to stretch infinitely in both directions. The glow never brightened, never dimmed. It was a fixed, unnatural thing, like an eye staring into the abyss, unblinking, patient. As I drew closer, I realized the source of the glow wasn't natural. It was emanating from the walls themselves. The obsidian was pulsing, the veins of dark glass flowing with an inner light, like the veins of some enormous creature, breathing beneath the surface. I felt it in my chest, a deep, sickening resonance that seemed to vibrate through my ribs, into my bones. I wanted to turn around. I wanted to run, but I was moving toward the glow, drawn to it as if the very stone itself was guiding me, urging me on. My legs moved without my consent, dragging me deeper into the heart of the cave. The whispering was louder now, louder than ever. It filled my ears, my mind, my soul. It was them, the creatures. They weren't just lurking in the shadows anymore. They were inside me. Come to us? Lena's voice coiled through my thoughts. The voice didn't sound like Lena anymore. It was distorted, broken, layered with 1,000 other voices. But it was unmistakably hers. The pull of her call was so strong that my limbs shook with the urge to obey, to be with her, to surrender. I tried to focus, tried to break free, but the more I resisted, the more the darkness seemed to open inside me. My mind buckled under the weight of it, the pressure of the cave, of the creatures, of this place beneath the earth. I could feel it all, could feel myself becoming it. I wasn't sure how long I wandered in that tunnel. My sense of time had long ago fractured, splintered by the growing weight of my thoughts. I could hear them, their whispers, each one seeming to speak just a bit louder, just a bit clearer, pushing through the fog of my mind. But then, just as I thought I would lose myself to them completely, I saw it, a figure standing in the distance. At first I thought it was Lena. Her form was silhouetted against the faint glow, her face obscured by shadow. But as I drew closer, I felt the sense of wrongness deepen. This wasn't her. It wasn't even human. The figure was tall, too tall. Its limbs stretched impossibly long, skin dark and shimmering like the glass of the cave. Its head was a smooth, featureless dome, as though it had no face at all. The air around it hummed with a deep, pulsing energy, as though the creature itself was some kind of living conduit for the cave's ancient force. And then it looked at me. I don't know how I know it was looking at me. It had no eyes, no face to speak of, but the weight of its presence pressed against my mind, seeped into me, dug into my soul. I could feel it in my chest, clawing at my heart. The whispers stopped. There was only its presence. Couldn't breathe, couldn't move. And then it spoke. Not with a voice, but directly into my thoughts, its words vibrating through me. A feeling, an image. Join us. Become part of us. The obsidian is alive. The heart of the stone calls for you. I felt the pull of it, a gravitational force that made my body ache with longing. There was no denying it. It wasn't just the cave anymore. It was something older, something vast. The creatures weren't separate from the stone. They were the stone. And I heard a scream, distant, but unmistakable. Lena. It broke through the trance, cracked it wide open. The connection snapped, and for one brief, precious moment, I could think clearly. I could hear my own heartbeat, feel my breath surge in my chest, ragged and desperate. I turned and ran, just as the figure reached toward me with its impossibly long arms, the fingers stretching, elongating. The tunnel seemed to twist, to bend itself in ways that defied all sense of space. But I ran anyway, driven by the sound of Lena's voice, now more frantic, more desperate. I had to reach her. The cave shifted around me, the walls narrowing, the black glass closing in like a trap. The air grew hotter, thicker, and my skin felt as though it were being burned by the very stone. The whispering returned, a tidal wave of noise, of pressure. It was louder, sharper, almost unbearable. The cave was not just alive, it was hunting, and I was its prey. I don't know how long I ran. My legs were giving out, my breath ragged, but I couldn't stop. Not yet. Not when anyone could still be out there. I found another chamber, larger this time, a cavern that stretched impossibly high, the ceiling lost in the shadows above. The walls here were rough, uneven, not as smooth as the other chambers. I could hear water dripping somewhere in the distance. The echoes in this place were strange, disorienting, like they came from some other time, some other place. And then I saw her, Lena. She was standing in the center of the room, her eyes wide and empty. Her skin glowed faintly, the same pale shimmer as the obsidian, and she looked at me, through me, as if I were nothing more than a passing shadow. Lena! I shouted, running to her. She didn't respond. She didn't even move. I reached out, touched her arm. The contact was like touching glass, cold, unyielding, unnatural. I pulled my hand back, horrified. There was no warmth to her, no humanity. She was something else, something I didn't recognize. A sound behind me. I turned too quickly, the torch spinning in my hand. The creature, the one that had spoken to me, was there, standing in the shadows at the far edge of the chamber. It was no longer just a figure. It was more, much more. It was the darkness itself, an unearthly presence that seemed to consume the air around it. And it wasn't alone. I could see more now, emerging from the edges of the cavern, their bodies twisting, bending, elongating in ways that defied all logic. They were the cave. They were its breath. And they were here for me. Lena's voice came again, a low, gurgling sound. It was no longer human. It was the voice of the cave. Join us! I stepped back from Lena, my heart pounding, but the air around me felt thick, thick with heat, thick with pressure, thick with something ancient and primal that pressed in from every angle. The whispering was louder now, echoing off the walls, rising and falling in a constant wave. They were speaking to me, to us. They had always been speaking. But now I could understand them, as though their language had existed in the recesses of my mind all along, waiting for this moment. Come closer. The command was unspoken, yet I could hear it, deep in my bones. My mind screamed to resist, to run, but my legs moved forward anyway, against my will, carrying me toward Lena and the creatures in the shadows. I had to stop. I had to save myself. But I couldn't. Not when the cave's call was so overwhelming. Not when every step seemed to lead deeper into its dark, suffocating embrace. Lena's form was distorted now, her skin a glimmering, fractured mirror of the obsidian stone. Her face. It wasn't her face anymore. Not the Lena I had known, the Lena I had tried to save. It was an empty void, her features shifting like smoke, like 1,000 reflections of something that should never have existed. Lena, I whispered, though the sound of my voice seemed to vanish almost as soon as it left my mouth. My breath caught in my throat. Lena, please. But her mouth didn't move. The cave moved her for her, a puppet on strings made of shadows and glass. And then she looked at me. Her empty eyes were pools of black, deeper than the night, and I felt myself falling into them, drowning in their absence. There was no depth to those eyes. There was nothing. They were black holes. But when I stared into them, I saw everything. I saw the cave, stretching to the ends of the earth, its roots buried deep in the bones of the world. I saw the creatures, their forms twisting and distorting, 1,000 eyes opening and closing like the folds of some vast, monstrous brain. I saw time itself unraveling, centuries and millennia folding over one another like a dream that could never be remembered in full. Join us. The whisper surrounded me. We are the stone. We are the breath of the earth. We are the silence between the stars. The air burned. I could feel it in my lungs, scraping against the walls of my chest like acid. The walls were alive now, breathing. They were living, every inch of them, every shard of obsidian, every sharp angle, every smooth curve. They were waiting for me to give in, to surrender. I wanted to scream, to tear myself free from the pull of it, but I couldn't. My hands were shaking so violently that I dropped my torch, and it rolled away into the shadows, leaving us in the cold, unnatural glow that filled the room. I couldn't see clearly anymore. The world was a shifting, amorphous thing, a canvas smeared with black, with glass, with shadows. And then I heard them, the creatures, the ones that were the cave. They weren't just watching anymore. They were coming closer. Their forms rippled like oil on water, shifting in and out of existence, their limbs bending and twisting in impossible angles, stretching and folding like the very fabric of reality was bending under their touch. I could feel them. I could feel them all around me, brushing against my skin, their presence pressing in on me, suffocating me. The whispers grew louder, not with sound, but with force. They were not just voices. They were thoughts, invading mine, taking root, planting themselves in my mind. You are one of us. I fought it. I fought them. I fought the overwhelming need to let go, to surrender to the darkness. But it was too much, too powerful. I looked at Lena again. Her mouth had started to form words now, words that weren't hers. They weren't even human. They were ancient, guttural, filled with the weight of centuries. I could hear them in my mind, even as her lips moved in. Time with the words. Return. Her voice was a low, vibrating hum. Return to the stone. Become the stone. And that's when I understood. The Obsidian Caves weren't just a prison for us, they were a gateway, a conduit, a place where the earth itself had reached out, hungry for something deeper, something older, and it had found it in us. The creatures that lived here, they weren't just alive in the way that we are. They were the heart of the stone. They were its memory, its consciousness, and they were waiting for more, waiting for the moment when they could shed their last remnants of their twisted existence and slip into the world of the living once again. Couldn't breathe, couldn't think. All I could hear was the hum, the pull of the stone, the whispers. I felt my mind breaking apart, felt myself sliding into the abyss with every breath, every heartbeat. I thought I would lose myself there, in that cold, empty space between consciousness and oblivion. But then I saw it, a flash of light, a break in the darkness, the entrance. Somehow, I wasn't sure how, I had found my way back. Or perhaps the cave had led me here, had opened a path just for me, just to see if I would walk it. I didn't hesitate. I ran. My legs barely responded anymore, my body feeling like it was made of lead. But I ran. The whispers were still there, still pulling at my mind, still sinking into my thoughts like ice. But I ran. The cave screamed, not with sound, but with presence. The walls rippled, the shadows stretched out to claim me. But I ran. I didn't look back, couldn't look back. But as I neared the entrance, the light, the real light, began to fade. I could feel the cave pulling away from me, its grip loosening just slightly, just enough to let me slip through. I reached the opening. The world outside was gray, clouded by the dust of the mountain. But it was there, the outside world, the sun. I took a breath, a real breath. The air filled my lungs, not with the thick, metallic taste of the cave, but with something fresh. But as I stumbled out into the daylight, I couldn't shake the feeling that the cave wasn't done with me. Not yet. I had left it behind, but it had marked me. I could feel it deep inside me. The whispers were still there, just at the edge of my thoughts. I was free for now, but the cave would always be with me, because once you breathe the breath of the stone, once you enter the Obsidian Caves, there's no leaving. Not really. You can never escape the stone.